Welcome to Outside Views, where we take an in-depth look at the obstacles the UK would face if it ever were to apply for EU membership again. Brexit is increasingly regarded as a mistake, and many Britons now favour joining the EU again. But what would that actually mean? Today, we continue our BRITURN series, where we explore the challenges of the accession process. In this episode, we examine Chapter 29, the Customs Union. When we're discussing the prospect of the UK joining the European Union again, we must understand that there is no shortcut or special treatment for a former member. The UK would have to apply like any other country, and that means fulfilling the so-called Copenhagen criteria. These criteria demand stable democratic institutions, a functioning market economy, and the ability to adopt the entire body of EU law known as the acquis. Every applicant follows the same process, meaning this is not really a negotiation in the way many would assume because of the name. The EU does not bargain over its rules. The applicant country must align with them. One key part of this process is the customs union covered in Chapter 29 of the acquis. The customs union is a fundamental element of the EU's internal market, ensuring the free movement of goods without internal customs duties or border controls. It requires a common external tariff and harmonized customs procedures. The UK, having left this system post-Brexit, would have to fully reintegrate. Before Brexit, the UK was fully aligned with EU customs regulations, but since leaving, it has diverged in several ways. The UK now sets its own tariffs and customs procedures, maintains separate trade agreements, a few of them, and applies different standards in some areas. Joining the customs union again would mean surrendering this autonomy. It would mean adopting the EU customs code, aligning with the common customs tariff, and integrating fully into the EU's computerized customs systems. One of the most significant challenges the UK would face is rebuilding the necessary infrastructure to comply with EU customs systems. And this is not just about adopting laws, but also about ensuring that UK customs services have the capacity to implement and enforce them. This includes the digital systems that allow real-time data exchange with EU member states, which the UK disconnected from after Brexit. Reintegrating into these systems would require significant investment and compliance measures. Another issue is the divergence in trade policy. The UK has signed a few trade deals with non-EU countries which would need to be reconsidered. Membership in the customs union means that trade agreements must be negotiated at the EU level, not nationally. Welcome Trump, by the way, who thinks he can. The UK would lose the ability to set independent trade deals and instead follow the EU's common external trade policy. And this could be politically controversial, as it would require reversing some of the supposed gains of Brexit. Furthermore, customs enforcement also extends beyond tariffs and trade facilitation. It includes important aspects such as the control of counterfeit goods, drug precursors, and cultural goods exports. The UK has developed its own enforcement mechanisms post-Brexit, which may not fully align with EU standards. And these would need to be reassessed and brought back in line with EU expectations. Joining the customs union again would also impact the UK's domestic regulatory landscape. UK businesses that trade internationally would need to realign with EU rules, which could involve costly changes to their supply chains. Companies that have adapted to Brexit by seeking alternative markets or adjusting to new regulations would have to undergo yet another transition, potentially leading to economic uncertainty once again. Additionally, border infrastructure would need to be rebuilt to comply with EU regulations. Post-Brexit, the UK invested heavily in new border procedures, including customs checks and trade barriers, to handle its new third country status. These would become redundant if the UK were to join the customs union again. And this means billions of pounds spent on post-Brexit infrastructure would essentially be wasted. Another crucial issue is Northern Ireland. The current arrangement under the Northern Ireland Protocol effectively keeps the region within the EU's customs territory to avoid a hard border on the island of Ireland. If the UK were to join the customs union again, it would remove many of the frictions that currently exist in trade between Northern Ireland and the rest of the United Kingdom, but it would also raise political questions about the sacrifices made to secure Brexit in the first place. Beyond Northern Ireland, there are concerns about Scotland. The Scottish government has been pushing for closer ties with the EU, and a move toward customs union reintegration would be used as political leverage for independence debates. The entire UK-EU trading framework would shift, affecting not just businesses but also political power dynamics within the UK. One major complication for customs union membership is the issue of third-party trade agreements, as I said. The UK has signed a few trade deals with non-EU countries post-Brexit, and not to forget CPTPP, some of which include terms that conflict with EU trade policies. And these agreements would need to be renegotiated or completely abandoned. For some industries, such as agriculture, this could mean an upheaval in supply chains and price structures. British farmers, who have partly adjusted to post-Brexit trade conditions, would face new regulatory barriers when readjusting to EU standards. The financial and administrative burden on businesses cannot be overlooked either. Reapplying EU customs law means compliance with strict rules on import and export declarations, border checks, and customs enforcement. The UK's workforce in this sector would need retraining, and businesses would need to readapt to EU customs regulations, which they had spent years moving away from. Businesses that rely on just-in-time supply chains, such as the automotive industry, would once again be significantly affected by any transition back into the customs union. Car manufacturers, for example, have already in part adjusted to new customs checks, leading to production delays and increased costs. A reversal would require another round of costly restructuring. At the same time, reintegration would bring long-term benefits in terms of reducing delays and simplifying trade across European borders, of course. A key element of reintegration would also involve financial contributions to the EU budget. While customs union membership itself does not require full EU membership, but it's hard to get there without, to be honest. The UK would need to contribute financially to various EU mechanisms, particularly in customs enforcement and infrastructure development. This would require political agreement within the UK, something that could reignite Brexit-related tensions. Moreover, the customs union is closely tied to the broader rules of the EU single market. That's why it's one of the chapters here. And many of the standards and regulations governing customs procedures overlap with single market rules. Joining the customs union again without rejoining the single market would still leave gaps in the regulatory framework, meaning additional negotiations would be needed. That's why it's better to negotiate that in a membership application. But ultimately, the customs union is just one of the many chapters in the accession process, but it's one of the most important for trade and economic stability. And if the UK is ever serious about joining the EU again, it must recognize that returning to the customs union is an unavoidable step, requiring substantial legal and economic adjustments. And that's it for today's episode of BRITURN. And if you found this video informative, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. How do you see the UK handling this chapter of the accession process eventually? I'll see you in the next episode. Thanks for watching, and the next video is right here in the end screen.